Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening for the first annual Tax Town Hall meeting. First of all, I want to go over a couple of things this evening to everyone. If you have cards, hold them up, and one of the young ladies in the maroon shirts will come and pick up your card. And then if you need a card and a pen, just hold your hand up and they will bring you an index card and a pen to write your questions down. All right. Well, first I would like to give a thank you to the Tax Commissioner's Office, under your Tax Commissioner, Tisa Smart Washington, the staff, for being here this evening, helping us out this evening instead of where they could be home with their families, but they decided to come here and help us out. Also, I would like to thank the PR department under Lisa Chester. She's the deputy director. Here to my right, thank you to her team for being here doing the audio. So at this time, I'm going to turn everything over to Ms. Chester, and she's going to go over everything with you all for tonight and how the event is going to take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. So welcome to Rockdale County's Town Hall. So tonight you're actually going to hear from our participants, our Tax Commissioner, Tisa Smart Washington, Chairwoman and CEO, Janice Van Ness, Commissioner Tawanya Smith, Post 1, Commissioner Doreen Williams, Post 2, Director, and Chief Appraiser, Will Barkley, and Rockdale County School Board Chairwoman, Jackson Lett. Okay. So to start, you may have seen some individuals out in the lobby, so I just want to just give you a little bit of guidance for this evening. We will go through the town hall and answer any questions that you have with regard to House Bill 81, the appeals process, tax season 2025. We'll also answer some questions that you have via those comment cards, and then we will close out. So with regard to what you see in the lobby, so if you have any questions with regard to your tax bill, homestead exemptions, any refunds, those individuals that are in the lobby are able to help you. They are from the tax assessor's office and the tax commissioner's office. So I know a lot of you may come here with some specific questions to your property. There are individuals here that are ready to help you tonight, okay? All right. So as I mentioned, we'll go through House Bill 581, and to start us off with an overview will be the Tax Commissioner, Tisa Smart Washington.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to ask our Chief Appraiser, Will Barkley, to also join me as we go over House Bill 581. It is a joint bill that affects both the tax assessor's office and the tax commissioner's office, and we wanted to make sure that if you had any questions that we can answer those questions for you, but that you understand the process because it's new for all of us this year. And we do this every day, and we know it's a little bit confusing. And so for our residents, we want to make sure that you are well educated on the process so that you know what to expect.
And you pass the mic to me. Good evening, everyone. Glad to see everybody out. Obviously, there's a strong interest as far as in the tax process within Rockdale County. And hopefully tonight, we can shed some light on the process as well as share some information that you may feel as though that is very useful as far as in understanding what we do and why the county values your property the way that we do, and also why you're being taxed the way that we currently are taxing you. House Bill 581, that was something that was actually very new to all of the counties within the state. For us in Rockdale, we didn't have something that called a floating homestead. House Bill 581 was something that created a floating homestead, which is going to give you an additional exemption based on the base year of your value. For instance, for 2025, if you had homestead exemption in 2024, your taxes are going to be based on that last year's value. So the addition or any growth that occurred in 2025, you're going to receive an exemption that's actually going to reduce that. Now, if the millage rate stays the same, your taxes will look very similar to what they were the previous year. However, if the millage rate goes down, then your taxes are going to go down for 2025. So hopefully, based on the fact that the market actually has changed a lot, there are some areas where there's still growth. It's just not as the way it was over the previous years. And what you've also seen over the last 4 or 5 years, there have been a tremendous amount of growth throughout the nation. So we've seen property values highly inflated based upon the sales prices. And because those values were so highly inflated as far as in the growth, and also with the assessor's offices throughout the state not having the manpower and the ability to be able to reassess all of the properties within a timely way, the legislators decided to create 581. So that was one of the reasons to force the assessor's office to do a better job of assessing properties each year. So you'll see a more consistent assessment. And also you won't see the high inflations from the standpoint where property values will increase by 20 and 30% each year. That's just a snapshot of what 581 is going to do. And also, it's going to force the assessor's office to reevaluate every piece of property within 3 years. The new regulations also requires that the chief appraiser look and value every property every year. So that's part of the duties and the responsibilities of the chief appraiser in every county. So that's part of 581 as well. There's some other components to 581, but hopefully we can answer all of those questions. But if you have some specific questions about 581, I would be more than happy to address those if you make an appointment or reach out to my office to do so.
I just wanted to back up a little bit and give a little history around HB 581. So in November of 2024, it was on the ballot on whether or not we as residents wanted this tax freeze in place. It passed across the state, so it's not just affecting Rockdale County, it's affecting every county in the state. So it was voted on in November. It went into effect in January of 2025. One of the issues that we're seeing in tax commissioners' offices across the state, as well as tax assessors' offices, is that we're learning about this process at the same time that we're implementing these new regulations. There were a couple of things that were not anticipated when the bill was authored in 2024 that they fixed with the 2025 tax year, legislative session. One of those was if you have more than 10 acres, if you have more than 5 acres of land, you only get the freeze on 5 acres. That was cleaned up in the 2025 legislative session. There were also, I'm trying to think if there were any other big changes with HB 92.
And there was the duties, of course.
Yeah.
So I think you covered it.
Okay. So one of the things that our entities needed to do, which was new for all of us, for all of our entities, our city, our county, and our school board, was that they had to certify what is called an estimated rollback rate. During the regular digest process, we usually calculate a rollback rate, and you'll see in the advertisement, that is the one that says that there will be a tax increase if there is a millage rate that's set above the rollback rate. That is different than the estimated rollback rate, which was published earlier this year. Our city, they certified a rollback rate. Our school system in our county did not. That allowed, because they did not certify the rollback rate, it allowed an estimate to be printed on your assessment notice. If they had certified the rollback rate, there would not have been an estimate on your assessment notice. From my experience, a lot of our residents will look at the assessment notice and they'll compare that to their tax bill. So I just want to make sure that you understand it's a little bit different this year because you see an estimate of your taxes, but you don't have any fees and you don't have that stormwater fee on your estimate as you would have had in previous years. Because of that, one of the things that the tax commissioner's office did was that we created a calculator on our website. You can go to our calculator and it will allow you to put in your value that's on your assessment notice this year, and it will give you a full estimate of your tax bill for this year. Because I know that's one of the things that people missed with HB 581. But now we're getting into our normal digest season, and we'll have the hearings, we'll have the advertisement, and we'll have that regular rollback rate that you'll see in the coming weeks. I just want to make sure that we understand that that assessment notice is going to give you the information, an estimate of just the taxes, but there are other fees that will be on your tax bill as it has been in previous years.
Also, with 581, I think there was a lot of information going around where everyone thought the values would be frozen and the values would not change. That is not the case. The state still requires the Board of Assessors to value all of the properties within the county at its fair market value. So when you receive your notice of assessment, it should have had the current year's value, which would deem what we call the fair market value for 2025. However, within the 581, there are stipulations that talks about the increase of the value will be frozen and you would not see an increase. You're going to be taxed on the previous year's value, pretty much what I said before earlier, but we still have to value you based on what the current market is dictating. The Board of Assessors are required to review and look at all of the sales that occur within the county each year just to determine what the market is doing. If the market is showing that the values are increasing, it's incumbent upon the Board of Assessors to increase the values, because if we do not, the state can come back and fine the county $5 per parcel, which equates to about roughly $200 and some thousand for the Board of Assessors not doing their job. So if you feel as though our values are high, they're more so in line with what the market is doing. There are going to be cases where the value may be not quite what you feel as though they should be, because what we do is called mass appraisal. And when you're doing mass appraisal, I'm trying to establish a value of a whole entire neighborhood based on a snapshot in time. Some of those values are going to be correct. For the majority of them, they should be correct. Some going to have some outliers. Some going to be a little bit low, and some may be a little bit high. So those values, you have the opportunity to appeal. And I'll talk about a little bit later on what's the appeal process, what it looks like, and what you need to do in order to file an appeal.
And I just want to reiterate what Chief Assessor Barkley just stated, that on your assessment notice, your fair market value for 2025, if you had a homestead in place in 2024, is not the value that you will be taxed on. The value that you will be taxed on is the 2024 value. So for this year, there is no inflationary increase. So whatever that previous year's value is, so you'll see your previous year value on your assessment notice, that is what we are going to tax you on this year, the 2024 value. So even though you see the 2025 fair market value on your assessment notice, understand that we're taxing you on your 2024 value. Now, in future years, there is going to be an inflationary increase, and you won't be able to do the comparison as easily as you can do it this year. But for this year, whatever that previous year's value is, that is the value that we're going to tax you on.
All right, we'll move on into the appeal process. Before I start with the appeal process, let me also talk a little bit about what the Board of Assessors do, function, and also the role that we play within the community. The Board of Assessors are charged with valuing every piece of property within the county at the correct fair market value based upon what a willing buyer and a willing seller would conduct a transaction for, meaning an arm's length transaction where the property could be sold, meaning without any constraints or any duress or anything of that nature. So we look at that to try to determine what's the fair market value for 38,000 parcels that we have within the county. And in doing so, We want to be equitable. We want to be uniform as far as in the way that we value property, and that is done through mass appraisal by making sure that we treat each neighborhood the same. And a lot of times what you'll find is that sales are occurring in a certain particular area. Sales may not be occurring in another area, so they may not see the same influx in value as you may see in an area where there's a lot of sales. So a lot of what we do is going to be derived from what the market is dictating. So once we follow the market, we establish a value. And once we establish that value, it's incumbent upon the Board of Assessors to notify you. This is required under law. We have to notify you each year what your taxable value is for that year. And that's in the form of a notice of assessment. The latter part of April every year, we try to send out a notice of assessment. You have 45 days from that time to file an appeal. You can challenge that valuation based on whether or not you agree with the market value or whether or not we've denied you an exemption. You may file an appeal on that. But one of the notions is you don't like the taxes. I want to appeal or file an appeal based on the taxes. In the state of Georgia, you can't appeal taxes. Your appeal has to be based on taxability. It can be based on uniformity, or it can be based on your value, or it can be based on a denial of an exemption. So you have to challenge the value if you're challenging anything. You're not challenging the taxes. The opportunity to challenge the taxes or talk about the taxes is during the time when they're establishing the millage rate. That's when you have to voice your opinion, whether you're pro for that millage rate or against the millage rate. That's your opportunity to challenge it. Challenging the value is during the time when the notice of assessments have been sent out, and that's 45 days that you have. So you have different avenues as far as what you may choose to go through. The normal way is going through the Board of Equalization. What happens is that once you file an appeal, we receive your appeal in the Board of Assessors office. So once it's received, a appraiser will try to contact you. They'll come out to your office, to your home at least, and what we'll do is that we'll try to figure out why there's a difference in value. We'll also look at the neighborhood. We'll recalculate what we've done just to ensure that our valuations are correct. So you have an opportunity also to talk to that appraiser. And if we don't come to a resolution as far as what we think the value is, then you can appeal to the Board of Equalization, to arbitration, or you also can file straight to Superior Court. And normally we do not allow individuals to file straight to Superior Court because we try to resolve those appeals before they go to Superior Court. So that is an option that you have, but the Board of Assessors has to agree on it. And for our board, we have not been in favor of allowing people to file straight to Superior Court. We would try to resolve it before it gets to that point. So, and if you disagree with the determination from Superior Court, you do have an opportunity to appeal that as well. And that's the appeal process. So for anyone who filed an appeal, you should be hearing something from us. We had quite a few appeals this year. But if you have not filed an appeal, the last date to file an appeal for this year was June 13th. So if you still want to challenge your value, you have to do that the next tax season, which will be in April of 2026. So once those notices go out, just be on the lookout, and you can challenge that valuation at that time. So that's sort of the appeal process in a speedy kind of way. So we'll move on to the next step, I think.
Thank you. So now that our appeal process has closed, that's when we begin our tax season. So the first thing that we do in my office is that there are a couple of calculations that we have to do in my office. One is that we calculate that rollback rate, and we hand that off to our entities, to our school board, our board of commissioners, and our city. They will then make the determination on what the millage rate will be. So you'll start seeing advertisements for the millage rate hearings, if we're gonna have millage rate hearings this year. If our millage rate is set above the rollback, then we have to have 3 meetings, or our entities have to have 3 meetings. And so we will see those meetings begin in July. Oh, we're in July. This is July 1st. time is going. This month we'll start, hopefully we'll be able to get those advertisements out this month so we can hold meetings in July and August so that that millage rate can be set before September the 1st. Once we get the millage rate set and we get approval from the state to collect taxes, around September the 15th is when the tax bills start to go out. So I'll let you know this, our tax season is usually September the 15th through November the 15th. And that is set that way because we are required by law to give taxpayers 60 days to pay their bills. If at any time those bills go out after September the 15th, you will still get the entire 60 days to pay the bill. There will be a new deadline. So I just want to make sure that you're clear that if tax bills go out after September the 15th, you will still be given 60 days to pay that bill. So normally they go out September the 15th. Deadline is November the 15th. Sometimes we have individuals who cannot pay the entire tax obligation by November the 15th. In my office, I do offer payment plans, and we start payment plans in January. We do 3, 4, and 5 month 3, 4, and 5 month payment plans. You can get on a payment plan at any time. Just come to my office. You can speak to any of the employees in the tax commissioner's office, and we'll make sure that we split that payment up for you. The reason that we don't start the payment plans until January is because technically you're not late until November the 15th. And because it's a limited time that you can be on a payment plan, I want to make sure that you're given the full amount of time to work on that payment plan. And allowing you to get on a payment plan before you're actually late does not give you the full amount of time to access that payment plan. So if you are having difficulty meeting that tax obligation by the deadline, just come talk to somebody in my office and we'll be happy to sit down with you and work out a plan. One of the biggest questions that I get every year is, why did I get the tax bill and I have an escrow account? We are required by law to send the tax bill to the owner, and that is why we send the tax bill to you. If you have an escrow account set up with your bank, more than likely they will reach out to us and we'll provide them with the information about your tax obligation. So you don't have to worry about that. We handle that piece for you. But if you ever have a question, you can check our website. If the bill is still due on our website, call us so that we just make sure that we have sent that information to your mortgage company, and it may be a delay. And the reason that delay happens is because most mortgage companies, individual banks, they use a third-party servicer. So they send it to the third-party servicer sends it to us, and that takes a little bit of extra time. So if you're getting close to the deadline and you're a little worried because you know you have an escrow account, your escrow account has always paid, but you're still showing that you're due, give us a call, we'll look into it, and we'll make sure that we'll check to see if we just haven't processed that payment yet, or if there's another conversation that you need to have or that we need to have with the mortgage company to make sure that we have your information. Okay? That's all that I have.
Thank you. Okay. So next we will move into our Q&A. We've received a number of questions from members of the audience, but before we do so, I know that there are some individuals that have recently joined us, and I just want to put a reminder out there that there are staff members out in the lobby from the tax assessor's office and the tax commissioner's office. If you have very specific questions regarding your personal tax bills for your property, if you have questions around the homestead exemptions or refunds, please see those staff members in the lobby. Okay? And there are comment cards being taken up now that also have your questions on them. So we're going to move right into the questions that we have received. And as I mentioned, we do have a lot of them, so we may not be able to get to all of these questions this evening. I was advised to also inform everyone that the remaining questions that are not answered tonight will be answered on rockdaletaxoffice.org. So in the coming days or in the next week or so, any questions that were asked tonight, those answers will be on there, and the questions that we weren't able to get to will also be there as well. Okay? So the first question that we have will also be directed to the Chief Appraiser. This is for Will Barkley. So the question that I have here, it says, during my current appeal, why wasn't the home across the street from my home not considered? My home value is just over $400,000, and the home was sold for $402,000. It was near $480,000. I have been so stressed by the increase to my mortgage, and so they want to know why the home across the street was also not considered.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to stand if I can, if I can remember exactly what was said. I think when we're valuing properties, we're considering not just one single piece of property to establish the valuation of one home. Similar to what I stated earlier, what we do is consider mass appraisal. And within the mass appraisal process, I'm going to look for sales within that entire neighborhood. And when I'm looking at sales in that entire neighborhood, I'm trying to find things that are going to be considered comparable. If the home is four-sided brick, I'm looking for something that is four-sided brick. I'm also looking, if it has a basement, I'm looking for a basement. And I want to find things that are very similar to the particular home that I'm trying to value, to make certain that our valuation is in line with what they're selling for. There may be a reason as far as why we did not select the property that was near you. There may be some conditions or whatever, but specifically about that, but just in general terms, we try to consider all those things when we establish the value. There's not a real reason that we would not select a property that was very similar in your particular neighborhood if it was similar to your property and it's sold. I want to utilize sales within that neighborhood. The only time that I'm going to go outside the neighborhood is if I can't find enough sales within the neighborhood. I still want to find similar properties to the property that is being valued. So I want to find something that's very similar to it. So that would be my answer to that.
Okay. Thank you. So the next one is for the school board. So this card says a senior school tax rate. Is there a senior school's tax rate, or should one be considered?
Thank you for that question. First, I am Sandra Jackson-Lett. I'm your board chair. Just want to let you all know that we do have school board meetings on the second and third Thursday of every month. The second Thursday at 6, the third Thursday at 7. So this crowd here, we would love to see you at our school board meetings as well to address any issues that you have with the school board. But for us, that question, I have it about 7 times up here as well. And the answer to that is that for us, the seniors, we have started in 2023. We went from $35,000 in 2022 to $50,000 in deduction in 2023. And since 2017, our millage rate has decreased. We also voted to opt into HB 581 to try to give you all breaks, and we all know that Representative Rhonda Taylor, them took it down to the state, and that's when we start those exemptions. But when the midst of getting all these other exemptions, we have to take it a little bit at a time because we want to make sure that we're still going to be able to service our children.
Thank you. So this question is for our chair. It says, now that the county has increased our taxes, is it too much to ask the county to do a better job of landscaping and debris removal on our main thoroughfares? This is not really a property tax question per se, but if you want to go ahead and answer that.
Hello. Okay. Thank you very much. So the question regarding increases in your taxes, I certainly feel your pain and understand that it is problematic in our community. And last year, during the campaign season, it's the number one thing I heard over and over and over again was the rising cost to stay in your home. And so, you know, one of the things that this administration has done when we came in January was analyze the budget. We had a Citizens Financial Oversight Committee that also participated, and that was comprised of citizens with skill sets in the financial arena and experience working with county government information. And so they helped us drill down on several areas. So our goal was ultimately to find ways to streamline, gain efficiencies, and make sure that we're wisely using resources in Rockdale County. So we have been on track. We have cut the budget by $1.4 million, and we have other measures in place that we are working not only to continue cutting the budget from unnecessary expenses, but also looking at revenue recovery. And so at our last meeting, you would have seen that we increased the fees for people going through the planning and development process. So you would see an increase to stormwater fees, and that will get us a little bit closer to the real costs that are associated with processing permits from our stormwater department, who has to go out and make sure that developers are in compliance in the community. So we are trying to look at the fees across the board. Many of the fees had not been increased for up to 10 years. So along with that, we also are currently looking at our parks and recreation fees, and we will have that before us as a board on July 8th at our meeting at 10 a.m., and we'd love for you to join us next door for that meeting, which is aired through social media as well as on Channel 23. And then as far as the roadways, please know that many of our corridors are state highways. So our director, Brian Kelly, who is the director of the Rockdale Department of Transportation, he works very closely with the state agency to make sure that we communicate about the improvements that need to be made. In addition, I know that Paul Denard, who has been assigned as the person in charge of projects for Rockdale County that include the transportation project at 138 and Interstate 20, the Salem Road expansion, and the Courtesy Parkway Bridge. All three of those projects he is our contact for at the Georgia Department of Transportation, and he has been made aware of some of the things that need to be addressed in regards to any blight or trash on the properties. And as far as the county responsibilities, we do have crews that help address some of those concerns. And we do have a private contractor as well that works on many of the thoroughfares as well. So we are trying to have a multifaceted approach to addressing the beautification in the community. In addition, Commissioner Smith is heading the Keep Conyers Rockdale Clean and Beautiful Committee, and I know that she and the other team members on that board have been very aggressive in their efforts to try and beautify Rockdale County. But of course, we always appreciate the help and support of citizens in our community in our efforts to make it a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the next question that we have here could be answered by any of our commissioners or our school board. So the question is, will there be an additional sales tax to offset homestead exemptions? Just homestead or all properties? Will it be a ballot question?
So there is talk about a floating local option sales tax, FLOST, that the state is looking at. I was at a meeting last week when they talked about this. And if we decide that that's something we want to do, then it would be on the ballot.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, great. So the next question that we have is for our chief appraiser, Will Barkley. It says, how does my property tax get audited to show fairness across the county? That's the first question.
Okay. Is that a two-part?
It's two-part.
Okay. The answer to that is each year, The Georgia Department of Audits audit the Board of Assessors office just to ensure that our values are considered to be uniform and equitable among all classes of property. So each year they go through and they roughly review the total amount of sales that occur within the county, and they pull about 700 or 800 samples to be able to look to see how are we valuing properties, and they have to be in line with what they're selling for. So that is what they call a sales ratio analysis. And within that sales ratio analysis, they look for any deviation from the mean, as far as being 40% being the mean. The current ratio indicates that we are valuing properties at 38%. The assessed value for the state of Georgia is 40%. So if properties were valued at 40%, they would have been valued 100% correctly based on what the market is dictating. So we are slightly below what the market is dictating. However, we are within the state guidelines, which is 36 to 44%. So we're currently at 38%. So we're expecting another review later this year, probably around August. We'll get a report just to give us an analysis as far as how did we do over the last year. So we're anticipating and hoping that our numbers are in line with where they should be, and the county is not going to be cited for not valuing properties correctly.
Okay. Thank you. And that second part was with regard to disabled veterans. Why isn't the entire amount being exempt?
Well, we follow the federal guidelines as far as in exempting, I guess, the exemption that you get for VA. So they establish that amount, and we receive a number from the state indicating what that dollar amount is going to be each year. So that's not a number that the Board of Assessors determines. It's not a number that the school board determines, nor is it a number that the Board of Commissioners determine. That number is given to us from the Department of Revenue, and that's actually a federal number as far as the amount of the exemption. So you're not totally exempt from property taxes, but you do receive one of the largest exemptions that you can get within the community.
Okay. Okay, yes, on now. So as our chief appraiser said, that number changes from year to year. For 2025, that number is 121,821. That is the 100% service-connected disabled veterans exemption. If your taxable value is anywhere above 121,000, then you will see a tax bill from my office. If you are, if your value is at an amount where that exemption wipes out any tax that you would owe, you will still receive a tax bill if you have a street light or if you have stormwater on your bill. Thank you. And lastly, how much is an acre of land worth, city and rural? Chief Appraiser.
I don't have that information in front of me as far as what the acre of land is, but that's going to vary based upon where the location. And within real estate, all of it's location. I mean, if it's commercial, whatever is deemed, then it could be totally different. So I don't have it in front of me. I don't know off the top of my head as far as what the dollar amount is.
Okay.
But I would encourage them to reach out to the office if they, or send an email. I'd be happy to answer that, provide them the schedule.
Thank you. The next question is for our school board. If my child doesn't attend public schools, are there any tax breaks or exemptions in reference to property taxes?
The answer is no. That's the ones that we already give, the standard exemption and the senior exemption.
I'm sorry, what is?
I said besides your standard homestead exemption and your senior exemption and the decrease in our millage rate, that's nothing else that we offer.
Okay, thank you. So that leads into this next question. Who is eligible for homestead exemptions?
Homestead is granted to anyone who owns and occupies property and treats that as their primary residence. You have to be in that property and live in there as of January 1st of that particular year in order to qualify. So what we require that you do is just show us a copy of your driver's license, and we like to have the property address on your driver's license. We would need to see that, a current utility bill, as well as a copy of your deed that shows that you are the correct owner of the property. Those three things, if you came into the office or if you can do it online, you can qualify for the homestead exemption.
Thank you. So the next question that we have is also for the chief appraiser. This question states, I never received my assessment notice, so I was unaware of the appeal window. How do I proceed?
Well, if you never receive your assessment notice, the assessment notices are also placed online. We do put those online for you as well. So if you would have looked at your property, I guess it's called the property record card through Q Public, we have those online as well. So it would have notified you of the current year's assessment. So you would still have 45 days from that time to file an appeal. So there's not anything that we could do at this time if because we can't control the delivery of the mail from the post office. I know that there were some issues as far as with the mail over the last probably year. They've had a lot of issues as far as getting mail, but that's not something that the Board of Assessors can take a responsibility for.
Okay. Thank you. So this next question is for our Board of Commissioners. I would like to know, what is the justification as to why my taxes increase and what said taxes are going towards?
Good evening. Okay, so the budget for this year, there are several key areas. As you know, Commissioner Smith and I are new to the board this year, but in our assessment and also with the help of our Citizens Financial Oversight Committee and our finance director, there's some key expenses that did contribute to the increase. So the courthouse bonds are roughly $7.5 million. Costly Mill, which is one of our parks on the north side, the debt right now is $3,145,000. The payment that will be due for this year is $1,142,000. The fleet expense, which is the last administration, the chairman signed the program for fleet, and so that provided cars for departments across the county. That is $1.4 million per year. And then the last administration purchased the property, which is known, it's right off Sigmund Road, the exit, for about $8.8 million. And so our debt this year is $902,433, and that will be ongoing for several years. So those are part of the significant increases that contributed to the higher taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So the next question we have is for Commissioner Smart Washington. It says, since Tisha Smart Washington took office, our taxes have doubled and tripled. We went from $2,800 to $6,000 in a matter of 4 years. Please explain the exponential increase.
Oh, I'm on a hot seat now. I would say this. In the tax commissioner's office, the tax commissioner is charged with the collection, management, and distribution of revenues. We don't set the tax rates in my office. We send out the bills, we collect the revenue, and we make sure that our entities have the resources that they need to provide the services to our citizens. So I can't answer why. I can just say that it has. And since my name is on the bill, we get a lot of questions about that. But in my office, we're charged with collecting the revenue, not setting the revenue.
Okay.
They want to know who is.
Yeah. So that is set by our entities, our Board of Commissioners, our school board, and our city. The millage rate.
So if I can just chime in also, part of it is that what you find is that there's an increase in the valuation of all properties within the county. So you have that increase in value. You also have an increase as far as in the budget of those entities that are going to adjust the millage rate. So when you have an increase in value, or if you have the millage rate stays the same, you're going to pay more in taxes. So similar to what I told you earlier, once the Board of Assessors adjusts the value, regardless of what the values are, it becomes the responsibility of the school board, the BOC, as well as the city, to adjust their millage rate according to the number of dollars that they need in order to operate. So that, if the budget doesn't go down and that millage and the values go up, you're going to pay more in taxes. So those numbers have to adjust.
So I might also mention that when I took office in 2015, the millage rate was much higher than it is now. It was 21.89 or something like that. But your house wasn't worth as much. We, at one point, in 22 and 23, no, 21 and 22, the millage rate was 16.69, which is lower than it had been in quite a very long time. The millage rate now is 18.69, and that increase in the millage rate was entirely due to the building of the new administration and judicial complex. So that will go down, but not. There's a timeline, just like a mortgage, of how long you're going to pay to repay those bonds. And I don't remember what that length of time is. 25, 30 years, kind of like a mortgage. But as we bring in, the biggest thing we can do is to increase our economic development. Because businesses don't have homestead exemptions, they don't have senior exemptions, they pay the full tax amount, as do any house that's a rental. That landlord pays the full tax amount. Somebody asked the question about, with the amount of apartments in the area, will taxes go down? We hope so, but with more people coming in, there's also more services to provide, as far as public safety especially. But economic development is the only thing that's going to really reduce your taxes significantly. We've reduced the budget by, I think the chairwoman said, 1.4 million. That's about 1%. So you do the math, what 1% of your tax bill is. And that's only the county. That's only the county portion. You are also paying city, if you live in the city, and school board taxes. You will find that the county taxes are not the biggest amount of taxes on your bill. So if you will look at where those funds are going, you will see that our school board is having a, it's ready to talk.
And everyone is really quickly to point towards the school board. Yeah, we have that host with our county tax. But if you have another property and you don't have that host tax, you're going to pay more county tax than you are school board taxes. And from 2017, we have steadily decreased our millage rate. But as the tax assessor says, your value go up, right, then your taxes are going to go up. But I feel like we're doing our part. And if you compare your bill with that credit versus one without credit, you'll see that you pay just as much county tax as you do school board tax.
So I have a whole list of reasons why we all should be paying school taxes. First off, if you raise children in this county, you were paying school taxes, and so were all the other people who either didn't have children or were seniors. They were all paying it. It's kind of like, as a senior, even though there's an exemption, you're paying for the future of our children. You're talking about, I was doing some math. Our kindergartners will be in the workforce in 13 years. Our juniors and seniors in high school, or if they're not already there, they will be within a year or two. They have Social Security and Medicare that come out of their money that they are earning right now. That is what pays for Social Security and Medicare for our seniors, is the work that young people are doing now. So there's a lot of, there's really a lot of reasons. We want our children educated, and we want them educated well.
And even further than that, when you talk about seniors paying tax, you have to also remember, and I'm be transparent, when my children I lived in an apartment for years. So I wasn't paying the taxes, but somebody was paying the taxes for me, so I can't complain when I get to the point, because I don't have any children in the school system. But I pay taxes on multiple properties in Rockdale County. So it's just a burden that we all have to share if we want our community to be successful.
There's one thing that I want to add a little bit of context to this conversation. If you have an escrow account, in 2023, we all received a grant. It's the Homestead Tax Relief Grant from the governor in 2023. And that equated to about $700 on average discount that we all received on our tax bills. The governor did not approve that grant for 2024 or for 2025. So if nothing else happened, if there was no increase in your value, your tax bill would have gone up an additional $700 just because we did not receive that grant from the governor from 23 to 24. If you have an escrow account, your bank more than likely estimated your 2024 taxes based on what you paid in 2023. So that means that your escrow account was probably short in 2024. And it is, again, it's because of that grant and it's just the way banks work. So what they do to recoup that money is that they'll raise whatever that shortage was, let's say it's $700, it'll be an additional $1,400 that you will pay because they want to recoup the $700 that they paid on your behalf, and they also want to make sure that you're not going to be short in the future. So a lot of us are, yeah, the home insurance has gone up as well. So a lot of us are feeling, me included, because I live in Rockdale County too. We are feeling it because we received a benefit in 2023 and we did not receive that benefit in 2024. One of the things that I like to tell people is that if you feel that with your bank, if your escrow account has been unfairly adjusted, you can come to my office and we can provide you with an estimate of what your taxes will be in 2025 so that they don't overestimate your shortage and make your escrow, your mortgage payment go up more than it necessarily needs to.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move us along for the sake of time. So the next question I have is for the Board of Commissioners. What steps do we need to take to combine city and county taxes so for those of us who are forced to pay both can get some relief?
Well, I think in order to do that, we would have to consolidate as a community. And, those conversations, we've had some lighthearted conversations about that. I think that we would have to listen to the will of the people in the community. But right now, to consolidate those taxes would only be if we consolidated governments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is for the tax commissioner's office. I am creating a revocable trust, and deed to my property will be titled to the trust. I still live in the property. The question is, will I have to refile my homestead and senior exemption?
That's actually a question for the tax assessor.
Yeah, in our county, the Board of Assessors is actually the one who approves all of the homestead exemptions. So based on that particular question, what we would have to ask is that whether or not whoever is the trustee within that trust that shows that they have a vested interest in that trust, and if they are entitled to homestead, then yes, you would still have to reapply, but you would have to provide that information to show proof that you have a vested interest within that trust.
Okay, thank you. Please continue to hold the mic. The next one is for you as well. If the appeal process is denied, how does the denial affect taxes? Are your property taxes frozen for 2 years or a period of time as a result of the denial?
That all depends upon how far you go in the process. If your appeal, with the new law, the way it reads is that you have to go and file that appeal, and once that appeal is filed, and if you go to Superior Court or go to the board or equalization, and there's not a reduction in the value, then yes, you do not qualify for what we call a 299C. So that value is not frozen for the next 3 years.
Okay. Thank you. So this one, it looks like it may be for the school board. With the start of the new courthouse project and new bridges construction, how will we prevent school and property taxes from increasing in the next 2 years?
As the tax assessor has said, your property value, your tax is based on your value of your property.
Okay.
What was the
Can you please repeat that? They said they can't hear it.
And what was your question? How will we affect our property go up? Okay.
Yes, so the question was, with the start of the new courthouse project and new bridges construction, how will we prevent school and property taxes from increasing in the next 2 years?
So I can address it from the Board of Commissioners' point of view. So in the budget, it's already calculated in the payments for the courthouse and judicial complex. So that will not be an increase to what you see now. That's already been figured in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the school board tax is based on the value of your home and our millage rate.
Thank you. So this is another school tax question. It says, why do I pay school taxes in Rockdale County after turning 65 years of age? Surrounding counties do not. So the question is, why do I pay school taxes? I'd like to read that again, please. Why do I pay school taxes in Rockdale County after turning 65 years of age? Surrounding counties do not.
And I'm going to pass the mic to the tax assessor.
Okay. So the school taxes are related to a homestead exemption. Currently, the homestead exemption implies that if you're over the age of 65, then you're entitled to a certain exemption that has been voted on as far as what the amounts are going to be. If you want to change those amounts, I think one of your state representatives or someone has to introduce a bill, and we all have to vote on it and pass that and say that we want to change the amount that the seniors are going to get. So what you also have to remember, whenever I have an audience and I'm talking about exemptions, exemptions are exceptions. So anytime you offer any exemption, unless the budgets change or unless the values change and go down, someone has to pick up the slack and the responsibility for making up those tax dollars. So if you offer a bigger exemption for seniors, that means that the others are going to have to pick up the slack. So it doesn't mean that the county, the schools, or the city is going to collect less money. They're just going to collect it from someone differently.
Okay, so do you have any? Okay, I'm going to move us along to the next question. All right. So the next question that we have here is, what would you say is the most important things that impact property value?
That's kind of a vague question. As far as the most things, there could be various things that could actually affect the value. As far as it could be the land, it could be from the standpoint, it could be the property is run down. It could be a bad neighborhood can have an influence as far as on the valuation of it. So you have a lot of different things could actually affect the value within a neighborhood. Also, when we are being certified as appraisals, we are given different information that actually affects the value. For instance, there are times that it could be something that what we call obsolescence. It could be functional obsolescence, where they may not have built the home in a way where the functionality of the home is correct. It may be difficult to be able to, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good example. From the functionality standpoint, they may not have placed a bathroom on the lower level, and you may have stairs or whatever in order to have to go up. So that may not be something that is functionally good for that particular property. And you may see that it's going to be valued differently from other properties because you don't have as many bathrooms. So that's one of the characteristics that we do look at. Also, there could be, I think there was a time when the siding was an issue, and also stucco was an issue back in several years back. So all of those things can attribute to the characteristics of properties and also affect the valuation of it.
Thank you. So the next question that we have here, this may be for Commissioner Tisa Smart Washington's office. Does the county have a title registry to help homeowners protect themselves?
That is actually a question for our clerk of courts, and we do. There is a program where you can sign your home up, and any changes that are made to your deed or your title, you will get an alert. If you check with our clerk of courts office, she'll have that information available for you. No, it's already offered by our clerk of court.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. So the next question I have here says, I filed an appeal due to land valuation being higher than the neighbor's land. How is land value determined, and what is the appeal process? We may have touched on that, but if you'd like to.
We have touched on it, but if you have filed an appeal, once you file that appeal, someone from the assessor's office is going to contact you. They're going to come out, they're going to review that appeal, and then they'll go from there as far as whether or not there are any adjustments that need to be made. And there could be a reason as far as why they did not select the land that you were talking about. However, when we're valuing land, we're looking to see what is vacant land selling for in your particular community. So those vacant land sales are the ones that establish the land values as far as in the community. However, we also look at the sale of properties in your community. And what we do is we subtract the improvement to determine what is the land value. And then we attribute that particular land value to all the properties within that neighborhood. You would see that those valuations are strictly uniform for that particular neighborhood. There may be some adjustments that are made based on shape, size, or the, size of the property. However, though, in a lot of neighborhoods, they're valued based on a particular lot, meaning that we attribute a certain value to each lot within the neighborhood, regardless of the size of it. Because a lot of times in some neighborhoods, the builders uses a certain amount of acreage that they use. If it's not more than an acre, it could be less than an acre, and we just value all those lots the same dollar amount, regardless of the size.
Thank you. So the next question I have is for Commissioner Smart Washington. What is a property value freeze, and if my property value is frozen, will my property taxes go down?
Okay, this kind of touches on HB 581 again. So with HB 581, your value is frozen, but the taxes are not frozen. So if there is a move in the millage rate, then you'll see either an increase or a decrease in the taxes. From 2024 to 2025, there is no increase. So this year, you're going to be taxed on what you were taxed on in 2024. Starting in 2026, there will be what is called an inflationary increase. So my office and the tax assessor's office will get an inflation rate from the Department of Revenue, and that will happen at the beginning of every year. So we'll know what the inflation rate needs to be applied for that current year. And your value can only move according to inflation. Now, I've heard people say that it cannot move any more than 3%, and that is not true. What the legislation says is that it cannot move more than the rate of inflation. Now, inflation has hovered around 2.5%, 3%, but during COVID, inflation was 10% during COVID. So if we had HB 581, you could have seen a 10% increase if that was the inflation rate at the time. But now we've seen things taper off because we're not in that uncertainty anymore. And so it's hovering around 2.5%. So for this year, you won't see any increase in your value, so there won't be, that won't affect your tax bill this year. But be prepared that in 2026 and beyond, your value can go up, but it will only go up by the rate of inflation. You won't see the big increases that we've seen over the last couple of years.
Let me also chime in on that. Just the value will go up. Now, let me be clear, and let's talk about the value, what value she's referring to.
Yes.
The value will go up because, as I stated earlier, we have to value properties at its fair market value. So your taxes will be based on a value that is no more than, per se, if that inflation rate is 3%. Your taxes will be based on that particular value. However, what you receive on your assessment notice is going to be the market value. That's going to be the fair market value. So you're going to see a different number on there, but your taxes are calculated based on the previous year's value or that base year value, whichever one we're talking about at that particular time. But the actual fair market value can increase, and it will increase based upon what the market is doing.
I stand corrected. Thank you for the clarification. So one of the things that I think that we need to discuss in my office is how do we communicate that to you? Because you'll receive your fair market value on your assessment notice, but that's not your taxable value. And the farther away we get, farther away we get from, thank you, amen, thank you, that we get from 2024, if you are still in your home in 2026, 2027, I still want to make sure that you understand that it's the 2024 value that we're using. So we may need to go through a couple of iterations of your tax bill so it's clear what we're taxing you on versus what your tax value, your fair market value is for the current year. So I say that to say, give us a little bit of grace. The tax bill may look a little different this year than it did last year, and it may look a little different next year than it did this year, because we're trying to figure out the best way for us to communicate the information to you so that it's clear, so that if you're at your house, you can make the same calculation, you could do the same calculation that I'm doing in the office, and that everybody's on the same page.
Thank you. So the next question I have here is, how are Rockdale County's upcoming developments and current developments going to affect property taxes? Examples, schools, roads, hospitals, etc.
Okay. I would say that based on what we know right now in the permits that have been issued, we've seen a lot of developments. There's some commercial, but also primarily residential. And so I know that's been troublesome for many. I join you in some of those concerns. And the Board of Commissioners is committed to trying to find solutions through rewriting our ordinances and strengthening our policies. As far as a financial standpoint, those will be revenue generating. However, we will have to match, services with the new residents. It will put strains on all of the developments in the community. However, the process right now does require that they are reviewed by the school board and the different entities before approval for projects. So right now, that is the program, that is a policy that we're following right now. So for example, in the review of an application the other day, if it was zoned, let's say, for the C.J. Hicks, Conyers Middle, and Rockdale High School area, there would actually be a place where it would list exactly the number of students enrolled in that school, the capacity available, and then it would say remaining availability in each of those schools. And so right now, as I've been told, we have capacity in our school system for 19,500 students, and we sit at about 15,500. Is that about correct? Yes. So there does show capacity of 4,000 students. Of course, that's not every school zone is a little bit different as far as what that capacity looks like, but that assessment is being done in the plan review process. And so likewise, I have had a conversation with Dr. Hum at the hospital, and they are continuing to work on ways to make sure we continue to meet demand in the community for health services. You know that we have continued to grow with urgent care facilities and doctors' offices, and so she just shared with me the great number of additions that they have added both to the neurology department, surgery department, and several other areas of specialty at the hospital.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So that leads us actually into the next question that we have here. And that question is, how are taxes assessed on apartments, townhomes that are leased in all of the distribution centers?
Great question. The property values based on, I guess, distribution centers, apartments, and all of those items are considered to be commercial property. And sometimes they are also considered industrial properties. Mainly the apartments, commercials. Currently, right now, 67% of the value on our digest is related to residential properties. I think it's roughly 29% may be attributed to commercial and industrial, and the balance remains some of the other properties. The big portion of Rockdale's digest is related to residential properties. So to have a healthy digest, you would like to see a little bit more balance as far as in having a lot more commercial. I know that there are a lot of things that are in the hopper as far as with commercial developments. So the more commercial that Rockdale gets, the better it is for the community from a digest standpoint and also from a tax standpoint. It provides a more balanced digest. So with the residential properties, we value those, with the apartments, those are not considered residential. They're considered commercial, and we value those based upon each apartment. And we look at their financials also to determine what they're renting for, to determine a value. So as an appraiser, we're required, based on our certification, to value property utilizing 3 different approaches to value: the market, the cost, and the income. And the income, they give us their financials to determine what their financial situation is and how much they're renting those apartments for. And we determine a value based upon that financial information for those apartments.
Can I just ask you to further explain maybe some of the top 10 companies that pay taxes? I think a couple of them are apartment complexes.
Yeah, quite a few of them are apartment complexes, and the others are going to be considered industrial and commercial properties. They're going to pay the bulk of the taxes.
If memory serves well, I think the Terraces at Fieldstone is one of the top 10. Well, I'm just speaking on what was published last year. So what I saw was that they paid $24 million in taxes for that property. So townhouses would be residential, a single family, yes.
Yeah, they would be considered to be residential unless they are unless they're owned by an entity, or let's say some type of commercial development. So if you have a whole neighborhood of townhomes Those are going to still be on the residential side. However, that's going to benefit the county in the long run from the standpoint there are no homestead exemptions for any of those because they're not owned by any individuals. So they're going to pay the full amount of taxes that they are going to be based on the valuation. So there's not an exemption for those.
Okay.
So,
And I'm talking about the investors as far as if those properties are owned by investors.
and I will just say from a mathematical standpoint, when you look at some of the units that have higher density, from the county standpoint, there may be more demand on our schools because of the students and things of that nature, and services for fire and law enforcement. But it is a reduction for the road infrastructure. So if you have a subdivision, let's say with 200 homes versus 200 townhomes, the repair and long-term maintenance of the road system in a subdivision with 200 houses is incredibly significant. So it costs about $1 million per mile for us to pave. So when you think about that cost, there is a tremendous difference in that. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so the next question I have is for our Chief Appraiser. If filing an appeal in Superior Court is an option for the taxpayer, why would the assessor's office have to agree or approve? That seems to be taking away the options of the taxpayer.
Well, that's actually part of state law. The Board of Assessors do not make that as a law. This is just part of what the law says, that it has to be agreed upon by the Board of Assessors. And we think that we're not doing a justice by allowing the individuals to go straight to Superior Court without ever putting forth an effort to try to resolve it. Some appeals can be resolved before they go to Superior Court. Not saying that all will get resolved before they go to Superior Court, but if we don't try to resolve it, then we've actually wasted the county's money in not doing so. So why not try to resolve it?
Thank you. So the next question is for the school board. As a county, should the school board have opted into House Bill 581? Why or why not?
I'm going to pass this to our CFO. Yeah, go ahead and answer. Okay. We did opt in. And the difference is, I know you're trying to compare us to other surrounding counties, and we all have to realize that all counties are different, whereas we have the ability to increase our millage up to 30, where a lot of counties are capped out at 20. So if we get into a situation where we need to increase our millage, we have that ability where a lot of the communities that was around us chose to opt out because they do not have that leverage.
Thank you. So the next question I have here states, will the property taxes decrease for the 2026 tax year since the market is down?
I'll answer that. I don't know. That's the first part. I'm gonna be honest with you every time. But one of the things that HB 581 says that we need to do as tax commissioners is that we have to do a calculation every year. So we have to look at the fair market value of your property. We have to look at the HB 581 value, and that's that frozen value plus the inflationary increase, and whichever is lower, that is the one that we tax you on. So every year we're going to use the value that is the lesser of the two, and we have to do that as a part of our process. So in 2026, if the market value falls below that inflationary increase, that is the value that we'll use for 2026, but we won't know until we get there.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question I have here is for our chief appraiser. Investors seem to be the cause of inflation because they can afford to pay more than their arm's length for a transaction. How can the county fairly assess the value of an individual living in their homes contributing to the community versus an investor?
There are only certain things that the Board of Assessors can consider as far as in how we establish the valuation of property. We can't consider whether or not we think personally that the valuations are overinflated or think that because the properties were purchased by an investor. we have to consider what's on the PT 61, and that's the physical transaction that occurs between the two individuals that gets recorded and transferred to us as well. So we have to look at that information, and we have to go by the information that's on that PT 61 because that is actually what the transaction occurred for. So when considering that, we have to value all those properties based on whatever the market is dictating. So regardless of whether it's owned by an investor or if it's owned by an individual, we have to value it the same exact way. We have to be uniform, and we can't consider any outside sources as far as establishing the valuation of property. For the most part, when we establish a valuation, we have no idea who owns the property a lot of times because we're doing what I call mass appraisal, and we're doing a whole neighborhood at one snapshot in time. So we don't know who the owners are, we don't know who lives in the neighborhood, and it really shouldn't matter. So we're valuing it based upon what those sales are occurring. And we can't consider whether or not an investor has purchased the property or not. However, the investor, if an investor does own the property, we can consider valuing it utilizing the income approach because there's income that's being generated from the property. That, in terms, for the most part, that generates a higher value.
Thank you. So this next one is for Commissioner Smart Washington. This states the homestead exemption has been $15,000 for over a decade. Is there an option for the county to raise?
There is, but I think that process starts with our state legislators. Am I right? Yes. So the $15,000 exemption was set in the late 1990s. And the truth of the matter is that it hasn't kept pace with the increase in values since the late 90s. But that process starts with our state legislators. I know our school board recently went through that process when they increased the exemption, the senior exemption from $35,000 to $50,000. And so our state legislators, our delegation, Representative Rhonda Taylor, Representative Doreen Carter, Senator Tanya Anderson, Representative Angela Moore, those will be your representatives to reach out to start having those conversations with them.
Thank you. So this next one says, how long does it take the Board of Equalizer to contact residents for the appeal of their property tax increase?
Okay. That's actually a question for the clerk of court. She's actually in charge of the Board of Equalization. The Board of Equalization has no association with the Board of Assessors office. Once the appeal is filed, we have a certain amount of days that we have to certify those appeals to the clerk of courts and also the Board of Equalization. Once she receives those appeals, she has regulations that she has to follow in order to notify you as far as from that standpoint. And that's not something that the Board of Assessors has any bearing whatsoever on. So our responsibility is once we receive the appeal from you, we try to notify you, we'll reach out and try to set up a time where we can come out and review the property. So we did have quite a few appeals. I think it was roughly 3,000 appeals for this particular year. So it was slightly less than what we had the previous year, but over the last couple of years, we've had quite a few appeals. A lot of that can be attributed to the increase in valuation. We understand that. So although the market is fluctuating in one sense, like I stated earlier, some property values are going down and some are still going up based upon what they're selling for. So, but the appeal process and the Board of Equalization is under the clerk of courts.
Thank you. And you just mentioned about properties going up and some going down, or taxes, and that is the question that I have next. Why do our taxes keep going up each year?
Well, I would attribute a lot of the taxes going up due to the fact that you had a substantial increase in property values all over the nation, Everywhere you saw values going up. I know there were a couple of instances where I had friends who were in the process of buying homes, and those homes were being purchased for more than $50,000 to $75,000 more than the list price. So when those things occur, the market changes. And if the market does change and the values are going down, we're still incumbent upon lowering those values just as well. So we have to follow whatever the market is dictating. So when the values goes up, they do come down if the market is dictating that. Back in, I think it was 2009, we had a market fall, so the values crashed, and all of those values came down. So we had to lower all those values based on what the market was dictating. So whatever the market dictates, that's where the Board of Assessors have to follow.
Thank you. So I have a question here. It says, I'm one of the youngest families in my neighborhood. Most of my neighbors are 60 years old, retired, and on fixed incomes. What are you going to do to reduce the tax burden on our senior citizens?
Well, you see, none of these elected officials want to take this question, so I guess I'll take it. So, and part of it is that what has to happen is that you have to have someone from the legislators decide that we want to introduce a bill that's actually going to benefit the seniors within our community. I'm not exactly sure as far as what the percentage of seniors, but we do have a lot of seniors within Rockdale County. And I know that there's a lot of relief that they're looking for. So if a bill is introduced by one of those state legislators, what happens is that we all get an opportunity to vote on that bill. And once we vote on it and it passes, then the amount gets increased as far as what that exemption would be. So that'll be something that you guys will have to talk to your state legislators about, get them to introduce a bill, and once it's on the ballot, vote for it, and then that makes the change. That's how it's reduced.
Well, I was going to answer that, so maybe this will address your question. One of the things that I think is important to remember is that there are, right now with HB 581, there are so many moving pieces to that puzzle. We decided to opt in and try and work towards finding cost savings for homeowners and hope that the inflation cap was beneficial. Remember that we also have the host tax credit, which applies on your maintenance and operation portion of your tax bill. So because this legislation is new, we don't know what that multifaceted result's going to be. This is kind of the year that we've come in. We're trying to make cuts, trying to gain efficiency in the budget, cut any wasteful spending. And so quite honestly, there's no commitment I could make about specifying a certain group of people that would be exempt from anything right now until we have a better assessment and go through the budget hearings that will start in late July, August. And that's going to give us a better idea of how we can move forward as a community. I do know that the tax revenues are expected to be increased, of course, for next year. What I can say publicly I feel comfortable with is my commitment is at least $1 million reduction on the tax side for the county government. And I know that my colleagues on the board are also committed to tax savings, so we are really working hard to assess and gain efficiencies wherever we can find them. And so, you know, the options are increasing revenue for us, which we are working on adopting policies now to do that, and cutting services. Cutting services would look like a day closed at a park or things like that. So what those real savings look like would be up to really, you know, town hall meetings where we have conversations about. And I'll give you this as an example. When I was on the board as a part-time commissioner before, we went through a recession and we had to make decisions about what that looked like to cut cost. And so what it meant was a day of the library being closed and a day of the parks being closed. So we did, you know, use some measures to make those things happen to meet our financial goals. And we'll see the result of 581 and if, you know, what the next step is for us as a board so that we can be responsible with your tax dollars. Because we also have to remember, it is very important to make sure that people can stay in their homes. That is something that's a priority for this board. And we also want to remember that we need to recruit jobs so people can work local. We want to keep businesses here in the community and not have them lured to other places where their tax rates may be a little bit lower, but further from Atlanta and not nearly as convenient for the transport of their services and goods. So we're trying to balance all those things. There's a lot of moving pieces, but we are prioritizing economic development as well. And I think, as the chief tax appraiser mentioned earlier and our school board member, economic development is critically important. So the more we can move that needle from the 67% burden on taxpayers in the residential arena to more of the businesses, that's going to be great. So an example would be the data centers we have a data center in the community. So they will start paying taxes on the building and property in 2027 for the property itself. But the equipment inside the building will be taxed. Will also generate revenue from the power that they use and things like that. So we're looking at all those factors.
And in the tax commissioner's office, we're also committed to ensuring that our residents can stay in their homes, especially our seniors. I've had many conversations with many of you where you're very concerned that I'm going to sell your property at tax sale. Tax sale is the very last option. I'm going to work with you until the day of the tax sale. And one of the things that I've committed to in my office is that if you are a senior with a senior exemption in place, then we won't sell your property at tax sale. We'll do whatever that we can to make that tax, help you meet the tax obligation, but tax sale will not be the end if you are a senior in our community and you have that L6 exemption in place. So, and we're always looking at creative ways, benchmarking in other communities, looking at what they're doing in other counties to see what creative and innovative programs they're putting in place. And if it makes sense for here in Rockdale, we're going to put it in place in Rockdale. We want to make sure that if you have chosen to live and and you've worked hard all of your life, and this is the place that you want to retire, we want to make that experience for you one that you don't spend your time fearing that you're going to lose the home that you have worked so very hard to purchase and maintain. In other communities, if your home goes delinquent, they sell your delinquent property tax to a third-party servicer. And that third-party servicer can do whatever it is that they want to do. I don't do that. They come in my office all the time and they say, we want to buy the delinquent taxes. I don't do that because I no longer have control to work with, I call you guys my neighbors. You live in this community as well as I do. And so when you come into my office, I want you to feel like we're sitting down, we're helping you stay in your home just like I would do my neighbor to my left and my neighbor to my right. And so I'm never going to sell off your property to a third-party servicer so that, that'll increase my collection rate, but that will also put extra burden on you as a resident of this county, and that is not something that I've committed to do in Rockdale County. So it's always looking at ways that we can change our process, if that makes sense, or, enhance our process, if that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you. So we are less than 15 minutes away from closing, so we're going to wrap up with the final two questions, and then we will have a closeout. For anyone that did not have an opportunity to get their question answered this evening, as I mentioned a bit earlier, all questions and answers will be on rockdaletaxoffice.org within the coming weeks. And if you if you had a question and you still want it answered, please get an index card and we will collect those. And we will make sure that your question will be answered in the future. Okay? So the last two questions that we have here, the first question is, can you please explain how the tax assessment is much higher than the value of our homes?
I'm not sure.
There's an example. Would you like for me to read it? Okay. It says, my house could only be sold for about $360,000, yet you assessed it at $500,000. Houses in my subdivision don't even sell for $450,000.
Well, the way that the assessments work, before we establish the value, we're looking at sales that have occurred the previous year. So if your valuation, in this particular case, if the valuation is not in line with what the properties are selling for, I would say reach out to my office. But theoretically, the way that it works is that we value a property based on what the sales occurred in the previous year. So we look at a 12-month time frame as far as what the sales occurred. So we look at those values and we establish what the values should be based on the sales. There shouldn't be a situation where properties are selling for a lot less in your particular neighborhood than what we have your home valued for. So I would hope that that is a unique situation. But I hope that also, if that individual would email us or just give us a call, I would like to look further into that one just to see where we are in that particular situation, because that's not the norm as far as how things work.
Thank you.
So if there's not a sale in that particular subdivision, then we have to go outside of your subdivision to establish a value based on sales that may have occurred outside of your neighborhood. We look at comparable properties, and those comparable properties are going to be considered to be anything that's similar to your property. We're not just looking for any sale that occurred outside the neighborhood just to come up with a value. We have to utilize comparable properties.
Thank you. And the very last question is for Commissioner Smart Washington and perhaps our chief appraiser. Why can we not establish an account with tax assessor's office that we pay into, which would allow us to save the money year long, as opposed to that limited time frame as mentioned during the payment plan? If not clear, can you explain clearer?
I don't remember the year, but it was probably, what are we in 2025? Prior to COVID, we could not take payments. The way that the tax collection process works in Georgia is that every year I have to get what is called a collection order for the Department of Revenue before I can collect taxes for that year. If I collect taxes before I receive that collection order from the state, I could go to jail. Now I love my job, but I don't look good in orange. So prior to when the law changed, the law didn't allow for us to collect taxes ahead of time. Prior to COVID, and I think maybe right around when COVID hit, the law did change that now allows tax commissioners' offices to establish accounts on behalf of residents. No tax commissioner's office in the state of Georgia has moved forward with that. Everybody's a little nervous about being the first to do it because you have to account for the money and the interest, and what if the taxes change, and the Department of Revenue has not worked out the rules and regs around this. But I would say this, I'm not opposed to being the first in the state to do it. So if that is the will of the people in our community, then I'll look into how we can establish that so that it's probably going to be based on prior year taxes. And then, so instead of you paying over 60 days, then you have an entire 12 months to pay our office, and then we can apply that credit to your tax bill. But we just haven't been able to work out the logistics amongst the tax commissioners. But if that's what you guys would like us to look into, I will be happy to do that on your behalf.
Thank you. So,
I'm sorry? What's your name? I'm gonna call you. I think I know where you, tell me where you live. I can look at my system.
Thank you. So we're gonna go ahead and close out now. So if anyone has any closing statements that they would, yes, go ahead.
Our tax assessor touched on this earlier that in 2024 we had about 3,000 appeals, and in 2025 that's the same. So if you did file an appeal and your appeal resulted in a reduction in your value, then you're owed a refund from my office. So there are a couple of things that I want to make sure that you're aware of. One, for us, it's a manual process. it's 2025, and I think that we should be able to do this using technology, but we can't. So in my office, we actually have to go into each individual account, update each individual account to the tune of 3,000. And that takes a little bit of time. So if you filed an appeal, once your appeal is resolved, it's still going to take a little bit of time for you to see that refund. The last time I checked, we had about 60 active appeals in our system, down from the 3,000. So most of them have been resolved. And we pay out the following month. So if we resolved your refund this month, then you will receive a refund check from our office the following month on the 15th. We pay who paid us. So if you paid your own tax bill, you will receive a check directly from us. If your escrow account paid us, we are going to refund the escrow account. So if you feel like you are due a refund and you have not received your refund, give us a call, we'll check on it, we'll tell you where in process it is. The same is true for 2025. If your appeal is resolved before tax bills go out, we don't make any changes to that account until I get the approval from the state. So if you receive your tax bill and it doesn't reflect the new value, give us a little bit of time. If you know that you have won your appeal, we'll go ahead and we'll correct it after the tax bills have been sent out. Is that the big question that we get around the appeals? Yep. Okay. So we're working on it. And if you receive a refund and it's not what you expected, give us a call, we'll check on it, and we'll just make sure that the information that we have is the correct information in our system, is the information that you have as well.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes our question and answer portion of tonight's event. I want to thank Commissioner Tisa Smart Washington for coordinating everything, and a special thank you to our Public Relations Division for helping coordinate as well. Thank you to Chief Appraiser Will Berkeley and his staff for being out front. Are they still out front, by the way? Okay. So if you have any questions, they'll be happy to answer them for you tonight. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners, I want to thank each and every one of you for being concerned citizens and for being engaged in our community. If you're not already engaged in a committee or interested, we do have applications, and you can also speak to our county clerk, Jennifer Rutledge, or Sue Sanders, if you have, if you want to get on the email list for any information about county meetings and schedules. Thank you, be blessed, and have a great night.